and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we're so glad to have you here. Soaring electric bills are hitting New Jersey families hard. They are up 17 to 20% from this summer. But there's one new report that is painting a brighter path that could lead to some relief. Standing by is Justin Balik, the state's policy director for Evergreen Action. He's going to talk about that. First, for the second year in a row, New Jersey has claimed the title of one of America's least competitive states, ranking 49th in the Tax Foundation's 2025 State Tax Competitiveness Index. We've got the nation's highest corporate income tax, sky-high property taxes, and a complex code that punishes businesses and families alike. We are joined by tax policy expert and founder of the New Jersey Policy Institute, Rosemary Becchi. Rosemary, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're number 49. All right. The Tax Foundation is calling New Jersey's tax system complex, non-neutral, and comparatively high rate. So for viewers at home, I think we kind of know what it means, but give us your take on what it actually means for the average family and small business owner in the state.
So, what it means is that it costs a whole lot more money to live here in New Jersey or to do business here. And frankly, what it's leading to is that businesses and families are leaving New Jersey.
Well, and it's interesting because the state does have programs that they try to attract and keep businesses in the state. But again, that high corporate index, corporate income tax, the highest in the country, it really, can you talk about how it's impacting job creation and keeping companies from expanding? A lot of companies, they do want to stay here, but they can't, they don't. They go down south, they go across the river.
No, you're absolutely right. We've got incredible resources here, and what we are seeing is that companies are leaving because that corporate tax rate is so high. I mean, what we've really got to do here is we've got to get our budget under control, right? We've got to lower our spending and then simultaneously lower our taxes. And one of the first things we've got to do is lower that corporate tax rate. I mean, because it makes us so uncompetitive. When I talk to CEOs, what they tell me is they can't attract talent here because of our taxes. Like, people don't want to come here. And so that's forcing them as well to go to other places.
I mean, I think you see it even as students graduate from high school. They're not even staying in the state for college, let alone they're not coming back to work in the state. When you look at this past election, Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican who ran for governor, talked a lot about about business, making that a priority. Mikey Sherrill, though, won handily. And her campaign was a lot about affordability, a lot about utilities. When the reality is, you do have to look at businesses. You do have to look at the business community and ensure that businesses are making jobs available for people and that it is livable to live and work here. How hopeful do you feel under the Mikey Sherrill's administration that lowering the corporate tax rate is going to become a reality or a priority, I should say?
So I think it's fascinating that when you look back to the governor's race 4 years ago, right? Phil Murphy said, if taxes are your issue, this isn't your state. So, and then you saw this year, both candidates very much focused on affordability. Now, Mikey Sherrill mostly blamed it on the feds, and Jack was very focused on the policies that were adopted here by the Murphy administration. And so I am hopeful because the overall message is that affordability is not working, that the people of New Jersey need some kind of relief. How that translates is to be determined. But I think one of the biggest things, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us in New Jersey, is to push really hard on, is that we've got to lower our spending and simultaneously lower lower some of those taxes so that we attract not only corporations here, but we attract top talent here as well.
Does that become more challenging considering the Democrats have even more seats in the legislature than they did before? They control the governor's office, the state legislature. Republicans haven't won a statewide office since 2013. And Republicans do talk a lot about transparency when it comes to school funding. And, you know, we have the highest, you know, among the highest property taxes in the nation. With Democrats in control, you know, how optimistic do you feel that there will be that transparency?
I think it's going to be hard, but I think that it is really critical for not only people in the legislature, but also for New Jerseyans just to demand the transparency. I mean, you and I have talked about it in the past. The fact that we don't know what's in the budget until more than a month after it passes is not acceptable. There should be a process in place where the proposals are being evaluated, that there's amendments to the process, and there's an opportunity for New Jerseyans to weigh in on what's being proposed.
A little bit about how Governor Murphy, he's defended the state's tax structure, and he said that this is necessary for funding schools and services. So, you know, how do you respond to that argument that high taxes, that's just the price you pay for a high quality of life in New Jersey?
I think we have to look around the country and we have to look at our neighbors. One of the things that the Tax Foundation report points out is that our tax code here in New Jersey is extraordinarily complex. We've got 7 brackets for our individual tax rates. You know, where other states, it's a much simpler program and simpler process in terms of laying out the individual brackets. And so I really think we need to kind of look around the country, take a close look at what's worked and what's not, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated just, you know, hearing about all of these different brackets. And the Tax Foundation that did the study, they said that this index that they have is kind of like a roadmap for improvement. So if you were advising legislators, what are some of the reforms that you might pass along, or that you would say that they should put as a priority as they head into the next legislative season to actually help the state of New Jersey?
So I really think that they've got to look at restructuring the code, right? As I just talked about, we don't need 7 different brackets for the individual tax rate. So we ought to be looking for some simplification there. And that, I think, is a really important thing to do. And again, I think we ought to be looking throughout our code to find other ways where we can support and help businesses. And sometimes that's going to be, frankly, outside the tax code. I think, you know, when you look at rules regarding independent contractors and things like that, we've got to reduce the regulation and really support our businesses and support different business models.
Well, and that's a huge issue in New Jersey, is that independent contractor, that status of being able to file as an independent contractor. That is something that is still is very much in question right now in the state.
Absolutely, and it is such a critical issue. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a women's issue, right? A lot of us, I've done it in my own career, have worked as independent contractors. It gives people flexibility, and I think you have to recognize that. It gives a business flexibility, and it gives an individual flexibility, and so I think that we have to really recognize those different structures, and I think we have to allow for them, frankly.
Is there anything that can be done during the lame duck session, or are you more focused on once Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill is sworn into office, working with the next administration?
I think that a lot of us are focused on the new administration and the next administration. I think it will be very important for them, again, to kind of look at all this and take this into account as they move forward. Again, I think we heard throughout, the campaigns, the number one issue was affordability. And I think that, we've got to start to look forward and figure out those solutions. And I think some of those solutions need to be kind of long-term plans in order to reduce taxes and the spending.
All right, Rosemary Becchi, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Justin Balik is the state's policy director for Evergreen Action. He's here now to talk about clean energy and the cost of energy in New Jersey. Justin, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Great to be on.
So can you talk a little bit about a new report out by your organization that really is highlighting kind of a perfect storm that we are finding ourselves in here in New Jersey? Can you talk about all these different factors that are leading to the increase in our cost of utility bills in New Jersey going up by 17 to 20% since this past summer? Why is New Jersey feeling the pinch so much?
Sure. I mean, there's, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. There's a perfect storm of headwinds that New Jersey and states around the country are facing. There's a few different factors that are front and center that's really important for people to understand. One is we have this unprecedented demand growth driven by data centers and the AI industry. That's a big factor in terms of what's going on. This was a big issue during the campaign. PJM, in particular, the nation's largest grid operator, has been really slow to connect clean, reliable energy projects to the grid. And so that's exacerbating some of this. We need PJM to clean up its and clear its interconnection queue and get more clean energy online. And then you look at the federal headwinds, you look at the Trump administration, and they're all out to salt on clean energy sources. That's really implicating New Jersey with the ideological war against offshore wind and other clean energy sources. And earlier this year, when Congress repealed a big part of the clean energy incentive structure that was in place during the last administration, all of those are kind of combining. But the good news is we have a real opportunity to move the needle. We just had a huge election here in New Jersey where the governor-elect ran and won in part by really promising to place energy costs front and center in terms of her administration's agenda. And this report that we have out shows that there's a few key interventions that state leaders could be pursuing right now. Number one is getting more clean energy built and online. That can happen through streamlining siting and permitting and also pressuring PJM like the governor-elect did during the campaign and is now in a position to do during the beginning of her administration. We also have in this report analysis showing that consumers could save a lot of money if we require data centers, both in New Jersey and throughout the PJM region, to supply or contract for their own clean, reliable energy as they come online. And finally, we think in this moment there is a real need to look at utility profit margins and utility business model reform. There's some analysis in this report that shows that that can really save people money. And there's also energy efficiency, EV charging that can be smart and timed towards demand. If you combine all of that, we think in this analysis that we commissioned with Synapse Energy Economics, there's an opportunity to save hundreds of dollars a year, upwards of $400 a year for consumers. And that's pretty significant from our vantage point. And we think it's an important conversation to be having on the heels of the election.
Yeah, when you look at that report you're referencing, it's upwards of 14.3 billion in statewide savings by 2023. And that, everybody wants to know, what does that mean for me? Households pocketing $467 annually. So can you talk a little bit about the baselines that these projections are compared to and how that it's a Synapse Energy Economics? How do they crunch the numbers and come up with these figures?
Sure. So this is Synapse is a really reputable modeling firm that works with state governments, it works with utilities. Their analysis is cited at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's cited in state public utility commission proceedings all over the country. And they're looking at the status quo where rates are projected to go up and up and up based on these headwinds, demand growth and federal attacks, as we mentioned. And we picked just a few key interventions like the ones that I mentioned and measured those against the status quo where bills are going up. And we think that these interventions, based on this analysis that is independent and third party that we commissioned, can really start bending the cost curve. It's not meant to be the be all and end all. There's plenty of other policies. We need an all hands on deck approach to this, but we think that these are the key policies to start with for New Jersey as we get into the new administration. And we're excited about the opportunity to really make a difference in addressing the cost of living crisis. I think the bottom line is that the analysis bears out what was said during the campaign. Clean energy is a key part of solving the affordability crisis. It's faster to be built right now than many of the fossil fuel alternatives that were proffered during the campaign by Sherrill's opponent, and it's cheap and reliable despite some of the federal assaults, and it needs to be a huge part of the solution to the affordability crisis here in New Jersey and elsewhere.
Yeah, so when you look at the report and it says, by 2030, we can save, billions of dollars, my mind thinks, oh gosh, 2030, that's really far away. It's not. It's only 5 years away. But
Right.
when you look at, building clean energy, other sources of energy, what type of timeline can people realistically expect? You're talking about how some of these things can be done quickly, but what is your definition of quickly? When it comes to people trying to pay their bills this month, 2030 is an eternity. So can you help rectify those numbers and give that context and perspective?
Yeah, and so these are annual savings. There are savings that start to accrue earlier and building up to that $467 number that you mentioned. The other piece that I think is important for everybody to understand is we see this overall solution set for solving and addressing the energy and electricity affordability crisis as really being a three-legged stool. And the solution set in our estimation consists of immediate ratepayer relief and seeing what we can do to give people some immediate help with their pocketbooks with utility costs. We know that that's been a big priority of the governor-elect, and that was a big campaign issue. That's something that we're supportive of. We also know that deploying clean energy as fast as possible is really important. There's an effort by both New Jersey currently under this administration and some other states to bring as much clean energy online right now as is possible because some of these federal tax credits are still in effect. So racing to deploy as much clean energy as we can before those sunset and subsequently is going to be really important. And then seeing what we can do to really rein in excess corporate greed and utility profit margins. That's all part of the equation from our perspective. Some of it is going to have benefits more immediately than others. I agree with you that people need help right now, and we share the governor-elect's urgency in tackling this crisis head on right away. And that's why we wanted to come out with this analysis right on the heels of the election to inform the conversation as folks consider next steps.
Well, Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill has made it clear what her priority is the first day. Executive Order number 1, once she takes office, is freezing those utility bills. But you still have to work with the state legislature, which is controlled by Democrats. Can you talk a little bit about how your organization is working with lawmakers, maybe now even during lame duck session? Are you looking more towards 2026? Because you're going to need the legislature to help a lot of these projects along.
Sure, and the legislature plays a key role. The incoming appointees for the governor-elect are going to play a key role. The Board of Public Utilities is going to play a key role. There's a ton of important stakeholders throughout the state throughout the state government apparatus. They're going to be hugely pivotal in this. We're really excited that we are joined by Senator Zwicker in rolling out this report and releasing it, and excited to work with him and the governor-elect's transition team and other allies throughout the state. And I should also mention that we're joined in commissioning this report with the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is another great environmental organization that collaborated with us on this analysis. So agree with you that both out of government and in government, it's an all hands on deck moment, and we're going to need to roll up our sleeves and enlist everybody we can, including the legislature. Thankfully, we know that there's a lot of champions in the legislature committed to addressing the electricity affordability crisis, and now we have some increased margins of hopefully some clean energy champions coming in thanks to the significant coattails of the governor-elect over the last week in the election.
It's very complicated understanding who all the different players are. You talk about data centers and corporate greed. Can you kind of put that into plain language? When you talk about corporate greed and trying to do something about that, what do you mean? What are you talking about so viewers understand?
Sure. So right now we have a monopoly utility system, and the utilities are incentivized to, in some cases, build more infrastructure than is needed, or or take excess return on the infrastructure that they do build. And so, as the governor elect pointed out, she's willing to take on anybody or any interest in uh, looking for creative and expansive ways to lower energy costs in the state. PJM is controlled by a bunch of incumbent energy interests, and right now the system isn't working for people. Their energy is too slow to get online. There's preferential treatment that doesn't make sense for fossil fuels that are more expensive and less reliable than some of the cheaper clean energy projects that we know are viable and can make a real difference in both cutting pollution and bringing down costs for people. These are the types of the systemic reforms that we're talking about, and reining in the profit margins in some cases of the incumbent interests is something that needs to be carefully analyzed and looked at as one part of the solution set here.
Yeah, and the other part that I want to make sure the viewers understand too is, when you're talking about saving money when it comes to the data centers, you're talking about these big tech companies, and they come in and they kind of gobble up power, and your plan would require them to bring their own clean energy, their own clean generation and storage. So how feasible do you think that is in practice? And what do you think the risk is if states like New Jersey do not step up?
Sure. I think this is going to have to be something that New Jersey does, and also collaboration with other states throughout the PJM region, because it is an integrated grid, and the region is going to be really important. We've seen Abigail Spanberger, for example, talk about the fact that she doesn't want consumers to bear the large loads of data centers in terms of their pocketbooks. And so that collaborating across the region is going to be important to institute these requirements. Look, from our vantage point, there's really no alternative. If left unchecked, this demand growth is going to keep causing rates to spike and to hurt consumers, and that's not something that anybody wants for the region or for their constituents. And so we think that the policy community, both in New Jersey and elsewhere throughout the region, is going to be needing to roll up their sleeves and tackle this challenge. And look, we're not naive about this. Data centers are here, they are coming. It is a big part of the economy at this point. The AI information technology race is full steam ahead, and some of these projects are going to move forward, but we need to make sure that we're doing it smartly in a way that protects consumers and doesn't leave them carrying the full burden for these huge load impacted projects.
Okay, Justin Balik, Evergreen Action, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Really good to be with you.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.